Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Panel on Thursday the 26th of June 2025. I'm Councillor Kayleigh Rippengale and I'm a councillor for Newtown and Christchurch Ward. I'm Deputy Chair of this panel and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. In the action of an emergency, there are no practice alarms planned for this evening. So if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. This meeting is being held in the Grand Jury Room in the Town Hall in Colchester. It's also being broadcast live over the internet, where it can be watched via the Council's YouTube channel, where recordings will be available to view afterwards. Please, with speakers, use their microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly and set them to silent and do not use voice or camera flash functions. There are toilets on every floor of this building and an induction loop in this room. If needed, we will have a short break at 7:30 and at 90-minute intervals if necessary. I will now ask members of the committee and attending officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Simon Gez, Joint Head of Planning.
Simon Davison, Sustainability and Climate Change Manager.
Mike Pollum, Transport Sustainability Project Officer.
Tom Day, Head of Energy and Low Carbon from Essex County Council.
Councillor Tim Young, Greenstead Ward. I'm subbing for Councillor Pam Cox MP.
There you go. Okay, cool. George Phillips, the Energy Manager for Colchester City Council.
Catherine Spindler, Saints Ward.
Councillor Mick Spindler, Shrub End Ward, subbing for Sam McCarthy.
Dennis Willetts, Lexton and Braeswick Ward, subbing for Kevin Bentley.
I'm Councillor Sue Lissymore, Prettygate Ward.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, councillors. We'll miss the substitutions as we've all been through them. I'm not aware of any urgent items. Are there any declarations of interest from councillors tonight? I see none. The minutes of the previous meeting, can the committee confirm that they are happy with the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of May 2025 and that they are a correct record? That's agreed. We have no registrations for Have Your Say. So we'll go on to the first item, which is the Community Energy Event Update. This is being done by Tom Day, who's the Head of Energy and Low Carbon at Essex County Council. Tom, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have a short presentation just to talk a bit about our community energy work in Essex. I don't know if we're able to put that up on screen. I'll just talk to that just while that's coming up. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come this evening and present a bit about the work that we're doing across Essex and in Colchester. My name's Tom Day. I'm head of the Energy and Low Carbon team at Essex County Council. If you'd like to go on to the next slide. Sorry, I'm getting used to turning and asking for the next slide. I'll try not to do that. So just a bit about the team and what we do. So I lead our work on strategic planning for the energy transition. So thinking about how we're going to get to net zero and looking at the requirements for investment in heat power and transport across the county, what investment we're going to need, when and where. So we spend quite a bit of time working on local area energy planning with the UK Power Networks, a network operator in Essex, and increasingly on the new regional energy system plan for the east of England with the new national energy system operator, which has been tasked with setting out how the government's Clean Power 2030 plan is going to be implemented. My team also does a lot of work on supporting small and medium-sized generation and working with communities on community energy projects, and that's what I'll be talking about mainly tonight. But we also lead the council's work on the retrofit agenda, so how are we going to decarbonise our housing stock across Essex for 630,000 homes. They contribute about 20% of emissions in Essex. A very difficult challenge to get those to net zero. About 85% of that housing stock is not consistent with a net zero currently. And what role can the County Council play in helping that to happen? Next slide, please. But talking about community energy, so community energy, just for those who are not perhaps familiar with the term, is really about energy projects, renewable energy projects that are owned, controlled, or offer significant benefits for local communities. So this can be about renewable energy generation projects. And the principles are that these are projects that will be owned by the local community and controlled by the local community, and bring local benefits. So surpluses and income generation from those projects being reinvested back into the local communities. Community energy can also mean energy efficiency projects as well. So there's a really successful community energy group in Colchester, done a lot of fantastic work on energy efficiency and support to vulnerable households on reducing their energy bills. But primarily community energy is about the kinds of projects you see on the slide there, renewable generation and providing benefits back into the local communities. Next slide, please. So why is it important and why now? I'm sure you're well aware of the government's commitment to Clean Power 2030 and the ambition to create an energy system that is entirely renewable by 2030. That's a very significant ambition. Just to put that into context, it's going to mean very significant investment into offshore wind, onshore wind and solar. And the UK Climate Change Committee has recently come out with its seventh carbon budget and has highlighted that about 60% of the carbon emissions reductions that are going to be needed to achieve that budget will come from electrification of heat and transport. So this means that we're going to need an energy system that is entirely reliant upon renewable energy. And the government has made a commitment to a very significant piece of that solution being community municipally owned generation. There's a target for 8 gigawatts of renewable generation to come from small scale local projects owned by communities. And just to put that into context, in terms of what 8 gigawatts looks like and feels like, if you imagine the new nuclear power station at Sizewell C, that will generate about 3.2 gigawatts of power that will supply 6 million homes. So the ambition for 8 gigawatts nationally for local and community owned energy is really quite a significant step up in ambition, and that's going to mean communities being supported to build local schemes, but also to take a stake in larger scale developments that are coming forward through community benefits and shared ownership. I'll say a little bit more about that in just a minute. So next slide, please. So the government, with this target, is expected to support the development of these projects through various mechanisms, and we're starting to see that. One of the first things government committed to when it came into power was the removal of the planning constraints on onshore wind turbines. That was a significant step. But interestingly, we're starting to see policy support come through for small local schemes. So there have been some recent changes in the requirements for small scale generation up to 5 megawatts, not to have to make impact assessments on the transmission grid. That's going to help those schemes come forward. We're starting to see changes in the regulatory environment that's going to enable schemes to sell power locally back into the community, which is a huge advantage for community energy projects, where they could not only generate power, but keep the value of that power in the local community. And government has just recently released a working paper on looking at community benefit schemes and shared ownership. So this would be larger scale generation schemes, large scale solar farms, for instance, where communities could take an ownership stake of those projects and or have a significant community benefit fund come from them. Those schemes do exist, those mechanisms do exist already, but they work on a voluntary basis, and we're certainly responding to that working paper and urging the government to look at making those types of interventions mandatory, because they would open up huge opportunities for quite significant revenue streams for local communities to benefit from. Next slide, please. So just in Essex, we started a programme of work back in 2020 to think about what community energy could look like, because we saw the opportunity to develop the kinds of projects I've briefly been touching on. At that time, there was really nothing. It was a bit of a vacuum in Essex, and we could see some interesting work happening in counties in the southeast, and we wanted to really see what the potential for community energy was in the county. And this came at the time of the Essex Climate Action Commission, so we worked hard to get for community energy to feature very strongly in the work of the Commission, and I'm really pleased that they set out a recommendation that we should have a network of community energy groups across the whole of the county, representation in all 12 of our districts by 2040. So that gave us a mandate, and off the back of that we set up a programme of work to help nurture community energy groups, which we call the Community Energy Pathways Programme. And through that work, I'm really delighted to say that we've started to build a network of groups across the county. The first phase of that work saw the creation of 4 community benefit societies. One of those was in Colchester, Community Energy Colchester, but also groups in Danbury, Tollesbury and in Saffron Walden. And that network has continued to grow, and I'm really delighted that we now have 9 community energy organisations, community benefit societies across the county, and a much wider network of 25 groups at various stages of development. And I think what this has demonstrated is that there's a lot of interest and appetite when we go out and speak to communities about the potential opportunities for local energy schemes. And in recognition of that work, I'm really pleased that we were recognised by the Community Energy England Awards back in 2023 for the programme of work. So next slide, please. What that's led to is kind of an extension of that programme, which continues to develop new groups to come through, help them with startup support and helping nurture them to develop business plans for their project ideas. But what we're really focused on now as well is helping that existing network of groups to start to develop a pipeline of projects and move them further towards investment readiness and to get them built out. And to deliver local generation schemes that can benefit local communities. There's still a lot of work in that to overcome some of the barriers to community energy, some of them I've touched on. So working with colleagues in planning and working with colleagues in government on regulatory framework to help these schemes come forward and making good progress on that. But the programme is really now trying to embed the progress that we've made with those groups and help to become self-sustaining. So the ambition is that we have a network of community energy social enterprises that can employ local people, that can generate work for local suppliers, and have income streams that they can be self-sustaining businesses in the medium to long term. Next slide, please. One of the things we found with that as well is we've been thinking carefully about how we can encourage more conversations in communities and kind of reduce the barriers to entry, if you like, for community energy work. And one of the ways we've started to do that and we've been exploring is through what we've called community-led energy planning, where we've been running events in village halls, in local communities, just to open up a conversation about the potential for community energy, what it can mean, how it can contribute to local communities and also help tackle climate change. And we've run a pilot, 3 of those. One of those was in Colchester just very recently. And that certainly created more interest in this work. And we're delighted that we've been able to secure funding just recently to extend that programme. Next slide, please. So specifically in Colchester, we've just as I mentioned, recently run one of those community-led energy planning sessions, and that's been in partnership with colleagues from the council, and has been successful in bringing in a number of parish councils. That was a very successful event run in the city just very recently, and that's kind of created the start of some discussions about helping to set up more community energy projects. And as I said, one of the founding groups was Community Energy Colchester. We currently continue to work with them on drafting bids for feasibility funding to explore more rooftop schemes, and they're looking at low carbon heating opportunities in the district. And I think what I'm trying to paint a picture of there is that just in starting those conversations, we've had a lot of interest from a number of parishes in Colchester, and we're really keen to help progress that work and do more work with Colchester in identifying partners who would be interested in community energy work, whether that's through local landowners and local businesses, but also communities who are keen to explore what community energy could offer. We're keen to work with you to identify grants and other sources of finance to help develop those projects and bring them forward. And I think this is a time of opportunity for community energy, just coming back around to my earlier comments about the government's commitment to 8 gigawatts of local community energy power. And what I'm keen to do is to ensure that we're in the best position to take advantage of that and help as many of those projects develop in our communities and in our districts as possible. Next slide. And so just lastly, I don't know if this will work. This was just a short video of the community-led energy planning session that we ran in Colchester, although it doesn't look like it's going to queue up. It won't work. Okay, so apologies for that. We'll try and circulate that afterwards. It just gives you a flavour of the event that was held a month or so ago and some of the feedback we got from colleagues on that. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Tom. So I'm going to open it up to the panel now. So I've got Sue first. Do you want to go?
Good evening. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. 2 questions, and I tend to ask these same questions almost at every single meeting that I go to. One, how are you dealing with non-parished areas? Because my ward is not parished. So how are you reaching out to other forms of community groups? And are you doing that? And if so, what type of community groups? And the other question is, how are you looking forward to government reorganisation? How is that affecting you? How is it affecting your funding, and how possibly do you see it going forward in the future?
Oh, thank you, sorry. Thank you for those questions. Non-parished areas, so the honest answer is we've been reaching out to as many groups as we can possibly identify, but there will always be people that we're missing. So we've worked through networks such as the RCCE, and I recognise that may not cover non-parished groups. So we'd be delighted. If there are gaps, then please help us with that, is what I would say, because I'm sure there will be gaps. And obviously we try and promote the events that we've been running to invite communities into conversations. I think the session we ran in Colchester, was primarily attracted parish councils. So perhaps that's something we need to think about. How do we broaden the reach? So I recognise there'll be gaps that we need to plug. So I'm very happy to take that away and work with officers to try and identify where we're perhaps missing in our outreach work to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities. I don't really want to speak too much to LGR specifically. I'm in the mind of delivery, because I think what I'm concerned to do at the moment is make sure that we continue to nurture the network of groups that we've already started to create and put them in as best a position as they can be to benefit from the government commitment to 8 gigawatts of community and locally owned power. There's a huge gap there between that ambition and the network of groups that we currently have, who are still in their infancy, almost entirely reliant upon volunteers, and have significant barriers to overcome, whether that's financial, legal, technical, to get these projects built out. So I'm, for my part and the team that I lead, we're really focused on putting all of our effort and energy into helping those groups to grow. I think, and with that, actually, we've just recently had our funding extended within the County Council for a further 12 months to March 2027 to support the work. LGR, clearly, there's going to be change. Personally, I don't want this to come across the wrong way. I don't want that to distract from the focus that we've got, actually, to build on the foundations we've already created. There's a huge job to do with LGR, absolutely, but we've got to find a way to navigate through that and make sure we can deliver for our communities.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from the panel? If not, I'm going to go in. I suppose my question would be, in terms of the engagement you would do with local authorities, is there more that local authorities could be doing in terms of their land, like parks, those kind of things, those land assets that we have, especially as considering we're doing the asset registered work at the moment. And when Sue was talking about like groups that you hadn't engaged with. I was wondering, do you have quite a good relationship with like the church base in Colchester? Because I am aware of at least one who probably would be interested in the scheme. So it's interesting.
Just on the second one, we have had some conversations with the diocese. It's probably been some months since we've had that conversation, so that's prompted me to come back around to that. I mean, with assets, yes, please. So my kind of response to this is always, there's enough roofs to go around. I think what I mean by that is that no doubt local authorities may want to invest in solar on roofs on civic buildings where there's a return on investment. But I think equally there are plenty of public assets that we could look to offer up as potential schemes for community groups, whether that's parking spaces or civic buildings, or certainly, you know, I mean, conversations with colleagues about our school estate, for example. We've got 230 odd grant maintained schools, and there's plenty more schools, you know, outside of the grant maintained sector who could benefit from solar on the roofs. But always there's a challenge around raising capital and the capacity to build these projects out. So we're always really interested in working with colleagues across the public sector, and that's, in fact, we're having this conversation with the NHS as well, where let's see if we can open these opportunities up to communities and enable them to bring projects forward.
Brilliant, thank you. A further question I have on that is that in terms of the funding that you were discussing and the revenue streams, are local district councils able to benefit from that funding, or is it restricted to community groups?
I'm not sure I'm entirely answering your question, but so we spend quite a bit of our time helping community groups. Part of the problem with these projects is finding the bit of money you need up front just to get going, the development money and the funding for feasibility studies. There is a community energy fund that's available from Great British Energy. It's heavily oversubscribed. So we're always looking at other opportunities to support groups access funding to develop their projects. Clearly, you know, with the constraints on public purse, it's difficult for us to be able to do that ourselves. But what we've been quite successful in doing is attracting grant funding and then using that to leverage in other sources of funding as well. But I'm not quite sure if that answers your question, sorry.
It was more of the case of, you said that community groups can benefit from a revenue stream. I wondered if local authorities could also, so say you were using a park, you were quite narrow in terms of solar panels. Are there other options in terms of like wind turbines, that kind of stuff? Could a local authority, say, put a wind turbine in a park as an example before we get into the planning and benefit from that revenue stream?
Absolutely. There's no reason why local authorities couldn't do these schemes themselves if they've got the capital and the appetite and the return on investment is attractive to them. So I talk mainly about solar because it's a well-established technology. There's more planning history around it, so it's easier to bring these projects forward. But absolutely, and also just geographically where we're located, solar is easier in Essex than onshore wind. But there's nothing to stop you bringing forward other technologies. Onshore wind and solar are the predominant ones, I think. But if you've got land assets that you could build out yourself, whether that's solar canopies on parking site, car parks, or ground-mounted solar or onshore wind on land assets that you own, yes, absolutely. I suppose what I'm getting at is I think there are enough of those opportunities out there to go around, recognising local authorities have got constraints on their balance sheets.
Thank you. Councillor Willits?
Yeah, Chairman, we had a jolly interesting presentation on asset-based community development during the week. And the slogan coming out of that, which I think everyone agreed to a certain extent, was that local communities should take control or influence over their own assets. And it's questionable about the extent to which the sort of clammy of local government should get involved in some of these projects, particularly energy projects where you can see the eyes flashing as soon as there's an opportunity to actually tax these local schemes, either by means of the ownership of the assets where they're being generated or via other means. So is the focus of this work on the local communities to help the local communities do it themselves? Or will it inevitably mean that the local authorities have to be involved either in the funding or, as you're suggesting, in the feasibility studies to a certain extent? And I mean, my question is also, it's also influenced by Colchester's very unfortunate experience so far. I mean, to date, the council tried to do a district heating system. It got through about £7 million, including £3.5 million grants from government, and all we have to date are 2 or 3 holes in the Northern Gateway area, and we've not produced 1 joule of energy yet, let alone 8 gigawatts of energy. And you know, it shows the local people, does the local authority really have competence to operate in this area, or should we be the enabler to ensure that the groups come together and those energy generation companies who do have competence take the lead in this initiative of pushing energy down to local communities?
So we're not solar developers, in my view, as local government. We can do solar projects. Solar on the roofs is an obvious one, but the work that we are doing is all about enabling and helping communities to be in a position where they could benefit from this opportunity. So whether that's them bringing forward small, medium-sized projects themselves, or whether that's them engaging with private sector developments that are coming forward in their community that are larger scale, that they could get a genuine benefit from. Either way, there are many barriers for them to overcome, and some of them are very, very small scale. It can be the relatively small sums of money or the relatively kind of focused, limited bits of support that can help them kind of galvanise, form as a group and become a constituted organisation even. So we're there to really enable that. And we are quite careful to work with, know our limits on technical knowledge. So we have spent quite a bit of time bringing in partners from social enterprise and third sector, primarily to work with us to help with some of the more technical aspects of this, with technical advice. So we've worked with an organisation called Community Energy South, now Community Energy Pathways, who understand the energy landscape better than we do, and others. That's just one example. But what we do is help represent those communities and in your words, help enable it and convene and bring partners together to make it happen. And also help them engage with organisations like UK Power Networks, the network operator, and understand the challenges of how does the small community want to bring a project forward, speak to the network operator for the district network in the county. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I don't see any further questions at the moment. It would be really good if you could sort of outline how councillors at this authority could suggest people or projects to you in part of a piece of engagement work, because we often hear things on the ground. That would be really useful if that could be shared among councillors here.
Very happy to. As I said, there's a much longer list of groups that we're talking to. I don't off the top of my head know how many are in Colchester. I'm sure there's many more that we could be speaking to in Colchester. So we, at the county level, we don't understand the network of groups at the district level as well as you do. So my ask is, please help us, and we've been doing that with Simon and his team, and really appreciate his support to understand who should we be speaking to in Colchester who we think might be interested in this. But equally, I should say, not to miss communities. So, there are many, I'm very keen that this is equally open to some of our more deprived communities who perhaps may not engage in these opportunities as readily. So, and certainly, we've been doing some of that work, necessarily in Colchester, but in other parts of the county where we've been working with some really deprived communities and having a conversation with them about how this could help and be of interest to them.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, we're going to note this report and then we'll move on to item 8, which is an update on the energy efficiency initiatives. Thank you, Tom, for presenting tonight. So we have George Phillips presenting, who's our energy manager at the City Council. George, do you want to provide your update, please?
I didn't push the right button this time. I'll start by saying sorry, I was almost late. I don't know if I was on the phone with Ant from the Colchester Arts Centre. I don't know if you ever spoke to him, but wow, he's a great dude. Yeah, I was here about 6 months ago. I presented what I was doing. I continue to try to to hold meetings with everybody that I can to try to find ways to save us money and to find ways to claw back money and whatnot. From the word go, I've always said that this is not about me, George Phillips. This is about this position and how important it is to Colchester. Before 2 years ago, there was no energy manager, and the importance of that has not been lost on me. And the reason I'm here is because y'all asked me to come back and do it again, because it wasn't lost on you. As you can imagine, if nobody was here for years and years, then the first, I would say, 8 months to a year was only about reorganizing. I wouldn't say reorganizing because there was no organizing to begin with. It was about trying to find out what we've got, where we're going, and whatnot. And we've built. The way I refer to it is the wave. We've built the wave up, and in the first 18 months, the first time I was here, I reported £305,000 worth of funding that we had identified. We were clawing back. We were taking opportunity of. In this next, excuse me, sorry, which I will see in your reports, in this next year, what we're expecting is £450,000 or 458, whatever exactly. That's only going to continue. Well, hopefully, if this position is here, not me, if this position is here, that will only continue, because the more and more that we meet, the more and more that we find that we've been paying these people's bills forever, or we've been overcharged forever. Hopefully Simon, I'll ask him to stop by a set of flats. Sorry, I'm not to put you on a thing, but where there's only like 3 or 4 different lights in the place. They're LED, and yet we're being charged like 14 grand. For it's that sort of thing where you think, wait a minute, that's not right. And that's huge as to what I do, is to find out what, I think the size of the organization that we have, without having someone in this position, again, not just me, someone in this position to ask the questions of, what are we missing? What are we doing? Then otherwise, finance writes the check at the end of the month, and that's that. And it goes on month after month. And this position is so important in finding out what we're missing, why, how we can spend. And then once I figure out I'm having loads of surveys done, including on this building here, to where we'll put in sub-metering. At the moment, things like Leisure World. Leisure World is our biggest. We use 4.5 million units of energy down there and whatnot. Yet we've got one gas meter. We've got one electric meter. There's no sub-metering through the whole thing. And that's what we're trying to achieve at the moment, so that we can understand, including in this building. We rent this building now. Well, if we rent this building now, or however it works, for weddings or, you know, or whatever it is, then are we charging the right amount? Are we charging too much? Are we charging too little? Are we, you know, it's being able to make, I'm not even going to say the right decision, because I worked for the council for too long to know about that, but at least an informed decision, you know, of this is what we know is going to cost us, and so therefore we know this is what we need to charge you if we're going to rent this space out to you. So again, these are all, I mean, you know, the main numbers that you see or whatnot, the 400 grand, all makes me look really good. But at the end of the day, the core of my job is digging through week after week after week and trying to find the anomalies and trying to find out what's going wrong and what's going right and how we can make our assets work better for us. And that's all. That's about it. Sorry.
Thank you. There are some very impressive numbers. So, do the panel have any questions that they want to raise? Councillor Willits?
Yes, Chairman. I was having a discussion with Councillor McCarthy at the scrutiny panel where we were giving, I think it was Colchester Borough Homes, a really hard time on their performance statistics. We were reviewing their key performance statistics. And in the sort of the banter one has with a fellow councillor during the interval, I asked the question, there are no key performance statistics for our achievements on environment and sustainability, and whether that was an oversight or whether it was on purpose because it was too difficult to do. Now, I'm not sure whether consideration of this fits more neatly into item 8 or item 9 on the agenda, but I raise it under item 8 because there one has got the start of financial savings, which of course are perhaps fundamental to key performance indicators. Just what are you doing? How effective, how efficient are we? The data is not really organised on being an accountant, you know, I always think in terms of annual years, you know, what did we save in 24, 25, what did we save 23, 24, what are we going to save in the following years? So I always think of a structured hierarchy, which we don't have, we just have a list of projects. So my first question is, should we be adapting these into a set of key performance indicators that we can use to measure or assess? Measurement might be a bit, although you do some measurements, might be a bit too ambitious, but certainly assess the performance of environment and sustainability in the same way as we assess the performance of municipal housing and many other aspects of the council's operation.
In 2013, I took on the job. I've only been doing this job for just over 2 years. Yeah, to address your first question of or assertion and whatnot, we only deal with the corporate. I only deal with the corporate assets and whatnot. However, starting in March of 2013, I was the Energy Initiatives Officer for Colchester Borough Homes. When I started, there was 555, actually I lie, 557 PV cells on the roof. There were about 150 air source heat pumps, and that was pretty much it. When I left 2 years ago, there was over 3,000 of our 6,000 homes covered with PV. You will not find another, go online, have a look, you'll not find another council that has 50% or over 50% of its council stock covered with PV. Every single one of those, when I started off, I tried to get the council, because at that time, the feed-in tariff was at 14p per kilowatt hour. The council would not put their hand in their pocket. And so I had to go out and find ways to make this happen, to cut the costs, cut fuel poverty for our people, and to cut the CO2. Now, I found two different companies that did that. And as a part of that, I don't have access to that system at the moment. However, there is a portal that if you ask Mark Wicks from the head of the CBH or whatever he is at the moment, sorry, I've not been there for a while, then they'll not only be able to tell you how much electricity is being produced every single year on every single home, but also how much CO2 is being saved, and on and on and on. When you talk about competence of the council, it kind of stuck in my throat a little bit, sorry, because we have a ground source heat pump down at Harrison Court right now, which is one of our sheltered housing schemes. I got that put in, but again, the council would not put their hand in their pocket, and so therefore I negotiated with an outside company who came in, and they, via the Renewable Heat Initiative, put this in for free for us. I'm not saying it went all smoothly, because no projects do. I mean, if anybody's does, please let me know. But that's what we have. We have over 500 air source heat pumps where we've taken the people on off-gas people, so people who are using oil to run their homes or whatnot. And what we did was, to begin with, we did our research, and one of the main problems with air source heat pumps is that they start with a home that's not thermally sound. So we upgraded the homes and made them thermally sound via, some of our homes out in Langenhelm, anyway, sorry, I'm terrible with names. They have 4 kilowatts of PV on the roof. They have air source heat pumps. They have double glazed, brand new, new double glazed windows, new doors, the insulation in both the roof and cavity wall. So we were looking at the home the way that I dealt with things from 2013 until when I left, was about looking at it as a holistic project. You look at the building as a whole, not just where there was funding for. And I think CBH has been incredibly successful in that, if I blow my own little horn. At the same time, you are correct. How we showed that, how we, we went up from, I think it was 72 to almost 75 as far as a EPC rating and that sort of thing. So they're all ways to show what we've done, and they're all the numbers that are underlying it. But as an organization, CBH did not have those things in place to actually show what we had done, without me sitting here and blowing my own horn as to what we did. CBH is absolutely fantastic. I mean, well, not anymore because they didn't replace me, but at the end of the day, our homes are very well insulated. They're very well taken care of, and I think that part of what I walked away from was that I was able to help the poorest members of our society, the most vulnerable members of our society, cut their fuel poverty. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I'll get off my.
In part, Chairman. I think the question's a little broader than Colchester Borough Homes. I think they're doing great work there. But the work of this panel covers the whole of the council's operation, and we're only just beginning to appreciate now just what it is we own. That we're having sort of appointed an asset manager who's keeping a record, a tally of just everything we own, every building we own, and every building is an opportunity. And there seem to be no specific targets for the level of achievement for environment and sustainability across the whole of the council piece. And there will be clearly areas where, sort of on benchmarking, we're going to be top, and that's absolutely great. There are areas where we're doing nothing, but we're not identifying that. And what we can say at the moment is that we're an organisation which has a turnover of some £150 million, and the savings for probably 3 years from environment and sustainability is going to be £500,000. That is 0.3% of our turnover. Now, I don't know, Chairman, whether 0.3% is, over 3 years, is reasonable. I don't know whether it means we're the best of class when we look at our similar councils in the area, or whether we're bottom of class. I just don't know. And the whole purpose of key performance indicators and benchmarking is so that we do understand what we're doing, whether we're doing enough. If we're not doing enough, arguing the case for further cash to be put in to have more projects, to achieve more, to do better. If we're doing too much, if we're at the top of the list and if doing far more than any other council, then that's a good position to be in, but perhaps you think, well, can it be broadened somewhat? So it's just a question which I'm posing, Chairman, and I don't think it can be answered this evening. I think it probably needs a bit of work from the accountants and those who know more about it than me, a visiting councillor, to this panel. But I just feel that this area of specialism should follow all the other specialisms of the council, from planning and so on, to have performance indicators which councillors can understand and use as a prime means of monitoring our effectiveness and how the budget is applied.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. I'm going to bring in Mr. Carnes and then Mr. Davison.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, certainly Councillor Willits raises a really interesting point, but in terms of savings as a percentage, as you know, an awful lot of what we do is people-based and tech-based in terms of intelligence and data, and it's not always possible to achieve those sorts of percentage savings when you're dealing with people-related costs. In terms of the KPIs, it's obviously something we can take away and look at. It's a really interesting point, but I think in terms of the report that's before you today on energy saving initiatives, regardless of whether we have a KPI, the figure quoted still clearly shows a very good return on investment on capital in terms of the staffing costs of that role. It's quite a very impressive multiplier, I'd have thought, and something that we can take away and look at further KPIs. But I'll hand you over to Simon, who I'm sure can tell you an awful lot more in this area.
Yeah, thanks very much for your question. The question on KPIs is quite a difficult one with regards to sustainability, and a lot of the initiatives that you can introduce as part of the sustainability agenda, because many of those initiatives are actually qualitative in nature and are therefore actually quite difficult to measure. It's kind of not a widget factory, as it were. So, but KPIs can be used and should be used really importantly. And I was actually aware of the conversation you'd had with Councillor McCarthy, and I am working on preparing you a brief on a more extended response to this, on how we could potentially introduce KPIs to monitor some of the performance we do. For instance, looking at the recent investment that we had in Leisure World, which was from Sport England, but also part of our own capital, we'll be looking at doing a full review after a year of those projects being properly in place, and then giving you a proper detailed assessment of performance against what was actually projected to what was actually achieved, and that will be brought to panel in October. But I should have this brief prepared to you, and I can share that with members within the next couple of weeks.
I've got Councillor Tim Young.
Thank you, Chair, to give you your correct title. These savings are very impressive, George, well done. But 15 of the 25 are utilities refunds.
Yes.
Perhaps you could give us a bit more, is that just down to smart metering, or were these privatised utilities companies ripping us off? Are they still ripping us off? And are there more utilities refunds to be had? I noticed in the projected savings there aren't any with regard to the 5 you've got there, but I was quite stunned to see that 15 of these were utilities refunds, and how far do they go back, and how much more can we get off these companies that seem to be ripping us off left, right and centre?
Well, I'd say welcome to my world, man. Yeah, no, this is what surprised me as well, because as you'll notice at the bottom, there are the ongoing, so year-on-year savings, which is, you know, 100 odd grand or whatever it is. The rest of them, for example, one of the first things and the bane of my life, and I still have not sorted this out totally, is our own Rowan House, which is our you know, it's our office, right? When I came in, one of the things, and this isn't part of this one, I clawed back £68,000 of water charges because, again, there had never been my position. Again, I'm not saying I'm the best dude in the world. I always speak about this position because no one's looking at it. No one has, you know, you've got your full-time job, everybody's got their full-time job, and so the idea that someone's going to be digging into all these sorts of things. I have a meeting every single Monday with Axiom, who's our energy people. They're the ones who correlate all our bills and that sort of thing. Well, one of the first things that we did was we had to look at where's the anomalies. You know, what's too high? As I said, we've got a building in Dedham that is one single stairwell with three lights in it, and we got a 14 grand bill in there. But if no one ever looks at these sorts of things, we have situations to where, for the last 7 years, there is a business that has been running successfully that we only charge them £1,000 a month, but we pay for all their electricity. And until, again, when I started looking at these things, that's 12 grand a year, dude. You know, I mean, this is a lot of money. And that's part of what, you know, the savings of whenever I stop this, we pay for people's water bills. We pay, because no one has ever looked at it. I keep going back to, I am not the sharpest tool in the box, but I can work this out. And this is the whole thing, is that's why all these clawbacks and everything. It took me 3.5 months for, I think it was EDF or Octopus, whoever it was, to realize that the building on, across the street from, was it Mecca Bingo, is it Osborne Street? Was not there anymore. Yeah, I had to take a photo and send them pictures of a vacant lot. I mean, this is the reason why there are all these things here, is that, you know, I have to go out and I have to look at these meters, and this is something that I hold against Simon, is that he never told me about this whole meter business, and it's just trying to deal with them. I mean, if you've ever dealt with Anglian Water, EDF, or whatnot as an individual, you try doing it as a corporation, man, it is shocking. But that's where most of these things come from. And the idea that, or your question, to answer your question, will there be more? I assume so, because that's what we do. I mean, that's what Mike and I do every single week, is we go through and we find out, what have we sorted out? What are we still waiting for? And what's next? And what else can we dig out? Because at the end of the day, that's my job.
Can I follow up, Chair? I was fascinated by your saying something about the water bill at Rowan House might be being overcharged.
Well, we were. Aye.
The irony of that is that building used to be owned by Anglian Water.
Aye.
So
yeah, you want to hear what's even better?
Please tell us more.
Aye. I am meeting with the dudes. I've met them 3 or 4 times on site. Our water meter is on the outside of is it the building that Anglian Water still owns? Yeah. It goes from there. There was 2 of them. One of them was outside. One of them was inside. Our pipe, which we are responsible for, goes into their building. You can see it going all the way around in the basement, and then it comes out and then goes into our building. Now, we are responsible for anything that happens to that building inside their building. That's a conversation I had with a dude just yesterday. And I've been trying to de-risk us by moving that meter onto our, you know, where the thing is. So no, it's, to say that I've found some interesting things in this job would be an understatement.
Thank you. I think we ought to purchase George a bigger can opener to get open bigger cans of worms, because and if anybody's listening from the Gazette to this, I hope they will pick up some of this stuff, because it's outrageous, isn't it? We're being ripped off by the utilities and the water companies. And something ought to be done about it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Willits, do you want to come back in?
Well, Chairman, I'm absolutely flabbergasted with what Tim has, like Councillor Young has teased out on this particular item. My view of what is environment and what is sustainability is all about saving the planet, reducing energy and so on. And that is what I really expected to come along and hear about this evening. And I mean, it's just amazing that we've got a guy here who's effectively doing fraud investigations against the energy companies, whose director should be jailed for some of the stuff that he's talking about. I mean, this does not really seem to be environment and sustainability at all. It seems to be stuff which the finance department should really get a grip, and perhaps we should be lending George Phillips out to the finance department to go around and just sort out some of these problems which seem a bit shy of environment and sustainability, but are all about how we reduce the operating costs of the council, because the more we can reduce the costs, the more we can put into frontline services. And it just seems amazing that the sort of things which we've just heard about have been going on. People are ripping us off right, left and centre, and that we're having to spend time and trouble to claw back all this cash when we could be doing greater things in environment and sustainability, reducing the carbon footprint, but by golly, in the first instance, let's go and get the crooks, and then we'll come back home and reduce the carbon footprint.
No, I totally agree with you. I've never been an energy manager before. This is my first go. And I just did it logically. You know, you find out where the issues are, where the problems are, and you go after them. I agree with you. My job doesn't necessarily sit comfortably within the sustainability team. At the same time, I'm not sure where my job would sit. And being outside of the constraints of whether it be finance or anybody else actually probably has a benefit to it as well. At the same time, at the moment, we lost Ben Plummer, and we have some interviews are coming up to replace his position. What's his job title? Climate Emergency Officer. And we actually are two sides of the same coin, because what he does what he does is about saving the planet, and what I do is about saving money, but the positive fallout to that is saving CO2, saving money, saving, you know, it's kind of a weird collaboration, shall we say.
Do any of the other panel members have any questions? No? I mean, I'm amazed by the things that go on in some of our buildings in terms of energy. So, and part of me was sitting there thinking, as Councillor Willits was talking about, does this need to go in front of governance? But that was just a thought process. I mean, I suppose what's next for you is my question. What exciting project have you got planned to save us even more money?
Well, I don't think you could say anything about my job is exciting. It's just, it's keeping on is what the deal is, you know, I have been part of a quite exciting projects over at Leisure World, where we've put in these water saving things. Well, not just water saving, we are it's a reclamation thing where when they're backwashing the pool, then instead of all of it going down the drain, then we save the water, we put it back through, and then it comes back into the pool at like 1 or 2 degrees less than what it was before, instead of 10 degrees less than what it was before. So those are some of the cool, the really cool projects that, that I get to work on, and whenever we find things, then yeah, I'm always happy to be a part of that. At the same time, and Mike, my colleague, will be will back me up on this and whatnot, but most of the time in our team meetings, I have to admit that what I'm doing is really bloody boring. I'm just digging through, stats, and I'm trying to find where we can continue to save. And I suppose in its all honesty, if my job is to do myself out of a job, yeah. I mean, if I finally dig through all this stuff and I finally get all these companies to charge us properly, and if I finally get all of our meters up to date and all that sort of thing, y'all won't need me anymore, which is a shame, and maybe I should pay me more now before I go. But anyway, but no, I mean, that really is my future is about continuing to find what's wrong. I mean, I've never, in any of my jobs, I've never asked why not, what's going on. So
Thank you, and thank you for a very entertaining discussion. So we just to note this report, so if we move on to point 9, so that's the Climate Emergency Action Plan update, and Simon Davidson is going to be presenting that, and this is just for us to note.
Good evening. Just a very brief update on the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which we last provided the annual update in the March Environment and Sustainability panel. The action plan was actually published in November 2024 on the website, and the latest iteration of the plan was revised and published in March. And I think, sorry, I've got my on section 5.2, that's actually a typo, and it should be, sorry. Yes, no, that is right, sorry. So that was published in March 25, and that's a live action plan which we'll seek to do an update every 3 to 4 months. The key pieces of work, I suppose, that have come to fruition over the last few months were the collaborative work in which we've done with the University of Essex and Essex County Council, which was to secure a £70,000 grant from the Heat Network Development Unit to produce a feasibility study to study for a potential heat network which would be anchored at the University of Essex and potentially provide heating to social housing in the Greenstead area, and could also potentially be used by the garden community development in the future. The final report has now been produced, and we're just in the process of having discussions with Essex County Council and the University and Colchester Borough Homes as to how to progress that. The long and the short of it was the heat network looked to be very promising for the university itself, and slightly less promising when you started to introduce the extended scope of it to include Greenstead and the garden community. However, according to Fairheat, who are the providers of the report, they suggested that there was a sufficiently good business case to do that, and it would warrant further development to take it up to potentially REBA Stage 2, REBA Stage 3 design. So those discussions will be looking at how we could potentially secure more funding from the Heat Network Development Unit to actually get some more detail on that. The next issue is, I kind of briefly touched on this in my previous response to Councillor Willits, was with the smart motors which were installed at Leisure World using the grant support from Heat Network. We're also preparing another business case to extend the number of smart motors across Leisure World. And I think this is a £46,000 investment that we're looking to secure, and that's gone to Project Development Board to look at. The return of investment on that is just over a year, and initial feedback from the smart motors that we already introduced is that the return of investment, that they've actually outperformed what they were forecast, and it's looking like the return of investment is coming down to more like about 9 months. So it looks like a potentially sort of really, really good investment. So that's kind of all we've got as update at the moment. I think George also mentioned that we've just lost our climate change officer, and we're in the process of trying to find a replacement for Ben. So we are going to interview for that, and we've had quite a lot of sort of applicants, so we're interviewing for that on the 8th and 10th of July. So I will now hand over to Mike Poland, who will give an update on some of the travel aspects of the Climate Emergency Action Plan.
So, go through a few bits here. The permanent secure park in the city centre is progressing now, which is From a council point of view, we're saving money and generating extra revenue through freeing up car parking spaces at our city centre car parks. At the moment, about 60% of staff drive to work currently. That's been kind of slowly trending down over time. And we've achieved a very good mode shift stars accreditation this year, which is an improvement from good, which we got last year, which is a nationally recognised award, which has been quite nice, and they featured us as an exemplary organisation. We also coordinate the Colchester Travel Plan Club, which is a network of businesses and organisations across the town, or the city I should say, where we kind of talk about, we share best practice, negotiate discounts and deals on public transport. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So some highlights of some of the things we've achieved. So we've worked really hard on car park management over the last year or so, kind of trying to make best use of the limited space we've got. And key to that is making sure that people who genuinely need, be it because of accessibility requirements or work requirements, if they need a space close to their place of work, they're able to get one. So we've introduced a needs-based parking permit system. Everybody fills that out if they would like a space. And then it's reviewed by their manager. And so that's had really good take up, really positive feedback. So we also offer a 50% discount on trains and buses for staff, with a 15% discount from operators, and then we make up the rest of it. And we've been running free park and ride for all council staff, that includes all of you, by the way, which is a 20% discount from the operator, and then we make up the balance of that, which has been really popular, given that the park and ride stops at Middleborough, and it's a very short walk to Rowan House, or if you work in the city centre, you can hop straight onto there. And obviously, once the Northern Approach Road is all finished, whenever that is, it'll be even more attractive. One thing I am going to mention, which sounds really daft, is we've introduced an umbrella pool for staff at Rowan House and other places. And this sounds really stupid, but one of the things people said that was one of the reasons they didn't like walking to work is because they're worried it's going to rain and they're going to get wet on the way home. Well, got some umbrellas for you, so you can take them. It's been so popular, people don't want to give them back. So if anyone's listening, could you return them, please? We also do celebrate kind of active travel days, so we do lunchtime walks. We do Dr. Bike breakfast. We've done did a week in September where anyone who travels actively gets a free breakfast. That was quite fun. People coming in Monday, Tuesday, and seeing us with our free breakfast, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all coming in, walking and cycling to get their free breakfast, which is fair enough. I'll do the same. So some of the kind of the bigger things, we've now got here at the town hall, there is a secure cycle hanger for staff out in the car park. That was kind of twofold. One, that there's a lot more staff here cycling to work and they needed somewhere to keep them. The second is to address kind of fire safety concerns about e-bikes, especially within the town hall, kind of getting them into a safe place that can be, we know where they are, we can look after them properly. So that is installed. If you're in the car park, you may see it. It's got a lovely big picture of a bike on the side of it. We've also secured funding from the Essex Cycle Grant to install a similar thing, a bigger one actually, at Leisure World, which again is a direct response to concerns about cycle security, which we all know is a bit of a problem there. So that will be available for Leisure World staff and Leisure World members as well in the first instance. So we're currently going through the process of groundworks and figuring out exactly how that's going to work. Recently had the Wellbeing Week with Dr. Bike for staff, and we've recently introduced an EV salary sacrifice scheme for staff as well. So they can now get a tax benefit on leasing an electric vehicle. So let's talk about how we're doing on the travel plan. How's the progress? So 2023 to 2024, we've seen a kind of a reduction of around 4% of kind of what we call our red modes, so driving alone, car sharing, motorbikes, taxis, etc., and a slight increase in walking, cycling, getting the train, park and ride. So that's kind of on par with what we would expect to see nationally as well. What's been really interesting is seeing that kind of as things have settled down after kind of lockdown and moving into working from home, people come into the office less. When they do, they tend to drive more, but normally that's so that they can combine all their business visits. So from a carbon saving point of view, we are currently massively better off in terms of those emissions than we were previously. So that's been not something we were necessarily expecting to see, but we're really pleased to see that. And obviously we're going to keep listening to staff as our work patterns evolve. So very, very finally, one quick word on the Travel Plan Club. So as I said, it's the network of businesses and organisations. Some of them are kind of the University of Essex, the hospital, and some small ones as well. We've got 16 full members and 47 associates, which is a network of about 10,000 members of staff, another 10 or 15,000 students. We have quarterly meetings, we have speakers, we share best practice, and most importantly, we act as a point of contact at the council for those organisations when it comes to travel and transport and sustainability issues. And this is a little bit of a cheeky plug. If you know anybody who works in anywhere that would like help with anything to do with this, send them our way. We're more than happy to help anybody. We're the experts locally. We want to help share that knowledge with people. So I think that is a very quick run through of pretty much everything. Yes, that is it. We are going to be running another travel survey in autumn. And so again, hopefully next year we'll be able to give you another positive update on that.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the panel? Councillor Lismore, and then I've got Councillor Tim Young.
Lovely, thank you. Just wanted to talk about the engine, I can't remember what the word is now, but the idling, sorry, yes, apologies, idling. How is that going to be moving forward? Obviously, certain areas were pinpointed as a real problem, but I'm sure we could all speak for areas within our own wards, you know, certainly around schools, for example, where we still have issues. How I got in contact with the council within the last few months and sort of said what's being done, and they said nothing. I'm afraid, no, can't help you, which is obviously disappointing, because when you have to pass that on to residents, you know, it's not a help. So how are you moving forward with that? Are you hoping to expand, and if so, how and where?
Yep. So in terms of so it was a DEFRA funded project with a kind of a specific timeline to do the kind of creating resources, do the resident engagement, all the rest of it. But some element of it obviously is going to continue on through our kind of general engagement work. And obviously you as councillors are in with residents, and you've got your communities, you're very well connected with them. So I would say we have got resources. So we've got flyers, we've got posters, we've got actually one thing for schools that's really great is we've got these enormous banners which kind of are all branded up, and you can kind of hang them up outside schools. We've got a schools toolkit as well, which is kind of follows the curriculum, teaching children about kind of the benefits of air quality and the kind of how dangerous it can be for them to breathing it in. We've been engaging with schools trying to get that in. As we know, one of the best things is pester power through children. To tell you the truth on that, the problem we've had is schools just, the resources they've got, it's just, which is fair enough. But if any local community groups would like to kind of help us to do some engagement work, do some getting it out there, we've got resources, put them in touch. We'd be really happy to chat with them, and same for councillors as well. We can share all sorts of things.
Have you been working with the Parking Partnership on this? Because I think what a lot of people, residents are saying, is perhaps are seeing the officers from the parking partnership looking at parking, but how involved can they be in the idling issue?
Yep, no, they've kind of been involved with it most of the way through, kind of talking to them about best practices, because obviously a big part of their job is engagement, isn't it? Talking to people, they know how to do it. And through because they have their 3PR initiative as well. So, no, I'd be really happy to kind of reboot that a bit, and yeah.
As I say, so it's just disconcerting when, as I say, you get a response back going, funding's ended, there's nothing now we can do, end of. So it's good to have just something we can grip onto to sort of say, yes, there is still something that can be done.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Tim Young, please. Councillor Young, can I just pause you for a moment? We're having a problem with the microphones.
Seems to be working. On the staff figures on the survey, as you said, Mike, these are fairly small decreases and increases. Is there a target? I probably should know, but if you can tell us, is there a target to get to a certain level by a certain date? Because, you know, not over impressive on first reading. I know you say that they also with working from home and then they use their car perhaps once or twice a week and then they go do all their business appointments, but it would be nice to know how much incentive is being given to make these figures even better.
Yep. So yes, definitely share the benefits with you. It's worth making a point as well. So what you said about kind of how practical it is for certain people, you know, people depending on, we've kind of taken a principle and actually we've now kind of made it into it's now our branding on our material is travel choices being the thing rather than anything else. Use what's appropriate. I've got a car on the driveway, but I cycled in tonight. So when I take my children somewhere, if we're in a rush, we'll get the car. It's fine. If I'm lazy, I'll drive to the shops. But I'll try and make the right choice when I can. There's no judgment. People kind of, when we're talking to members of the public, some of the first things we talk to them about, you get this like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you forcing me to do something? And the answer is we're not. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to enable people as much as we possibly can. Again, if we talk about kind of deprived communities, people who are less well off, they're the ones who can get the biggest benefit from having more enabling active and sustainable travel. Owning a car is hideously expensive. Using a car is hideously expensive. I have one, I know. So that's kind of like a big part of what we do. Car club issues, yeah, we're on to that. It's still going through. Yeah, we're working with, so Enterprise are our kind of car club provider. We're working with Enterprise to resolve those issues. So yeah. And on the statistics, yes, very frustrating. The reality of kind of travel plans and modal shift is 1% a year is considered a massive victory, is the reality of modal shift. So we would expect 5% over 5 years. So the life of a travel plan is generally 5 years. Occasionally we do see kind of like a seismic shift and things, and it carries on like that. It very much depends on how much buy-in you've got in your. So I should say, kind of talking as from the travel plan club point of view, from lots of different organisations, is the organisations that have got the buy-in from a senior level, and that's kind of senior leadership, and for us councillors as well, are the ones who see the biggest benefit most quickly. So we're very lucky here. We do have good support from our senior leadership team. Clearly, we've got our support from our councillors. We could always have more, but we're pleased with the progress we're making. We'd love to see more. The other thing is, it's been really interesting, if you're into this kind of thing, which I guess I must be, seeing how things have kind of over the last. So I joined in early 2019 and was just thrown straight into the thick of everything changing immediately. And it's been really interesting, kind of seeing it all kind of ebb and flow, and seeing where we're coming off to now. And the reality is, we're only just settling down into whatever you want to call this. So the next few years is going to be, that's going to be when we see kind of the numbers shake out properly. So I think that answers everything. Some of those are non-answers, but yeah.
Okay, I have a question. So drawing on the car club, what would be really useful for us to measure its success is how many, I suppose how many journeys have been I'd like to see that kind of data, and how many registered users, so we can sort of see it progressing. It's great when we hear that there's an extra car, but it's how many journeys are they, and how many users have we got?
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm just checking to see if I've got any notes here on that, and I don't think I do. I know that we do have that information, and we'll be able to share that, definitely.
Brilliant. That would be great if we could have that going forward, so we can see that. Because I was just building on Councillor Young's point about what is a good modal shift. That benchmarking is really useful for us, as we don't live in that world. So that would be really helpful. Thank you. So I'm just conscious that it is 7:30. Do you members want to power on?
Sorry, can I add something to that just real quick? I think we tend to forget that we have a climate emergency that we claimed as well. And as part of that information, we do have a company that they will tell us how many miles have been used, and so therefore how much CO2 has been saved and all that other sort of stuff. So I think to link this back into our commitment to climate change might be a good addition to just the numbers. Sorry, didn't mean to jump in.
No, I completely agree. I think it just gives us a bit more context, on that, and we can see, the progression. So that would be great if we could see that. Can share it this time, but next time we do an update, would be great. Cool, thank you. Councillor Willits?
I got a couple of quick questions on entirely different matters, so I'll ask them separately with your permission, Chair. The first really rises from Councillor Lissamore's question. In Lexton Road, there are 8 schools, which means that there are 8 groups of parents who come and collect their children or young people, and idling cars is a real problem. Perhaps not so much now that we've got electric cars, because they don't idle to keep the air conditioning going in summer. But it's a problem. Yet when you look at the map of where the pollution measurements are in in Colchester. There seems to be a complete lack of them along Lexton Road. So I ask, is the placement of air pollution and monitoring air pollution within the orbit of this particular panel and the officers who support this panel, or is it sort of hived off somewhere else? And should it be within the orbit of this panel to ensure that we're bringing together air pollution and used cars and monitoring of just where the problem areas are, albeit Councillor Lismore and I would both argue that ours is the most important in the city. That's my first question.
Who wants to take? You go? Okay.
So the air quality monitors and pollution monitors are the responsibility of Essex County Council. They manage those and they install them. So it would be up to them to choose where they put them. We can certainly request them, but I know for every monitor there's quite a significant cost associated with the installation, monitoring and ongoing fees. So that would be my answer to that one.
Thank you, Chair. Well, perhaps we should be more proactive in taking control of those things which affect our local communities. The second question I have is on 5.7, the outline of the work being done on Essex University and their heat distribution network. I can see that this is a reasonable prospect in regard to the new town, because the DPD can just mandate that energy systems will be provided as part of the build, and away it will go. But it would seem very expensive to draw the boundary around Grinstead as well, where the project would entail, I guess, having to make a heat conversion process to allow the hot water and the heating from the university to flow into premises which were never designed to benefit from that particular facility at all. So I wonder what the rationale is to include Grinstead in that scheme, and perhaps more importantly, is this study going to tease out the actual costs and the difficulty of providing a sort of socially driven heat and hot water scheme for the Grinstead estate? Because if anywhere needs it in Colchester, it is perhaps that particular estate which should be a priority, albeit a scheme where the costs are going to be quite difficult to assimilate, because many of the properties are now getting on a bit, and while it's easy to do it for new, it's not easy to do it for the old. So how do we draw sensible boundaries around these schemes to ensure that sort of the technology enables us, and how do we draw the boundaries to ensure that where the social need is greatest, the cheap heat will be provided?
I think in the first instance that was kind of the point of doing the initial feasibility study, just to see what the baseline and what the approach could potentially be with regards to providing heat to the social dwellings within the Grinstead estate. It's to provide hot water to existing residential buildings is perfectly within the technological capabilities of a heat network. It's not something that is particularly difficult to do. You can do it through heat networks which have a high temperature flow, so they could actually be used to use the existing heat distribution network within the dwellings of the existing radiators. But I think more importantly, it's about identifying potential other routes for the decarbonisation of the social housing estate of Colchester, because when you look at the possibility feasible, well, that when gas boilers will no longer be on the market as from 2035, and the Colchester Borough Homes will have to look to decarbonise these buildings by 2050, they need to look at the costs of doing that. And one of the ways they could do that would be to use the route of individual air source heat pumps, which could be fantastically expensive and also potentially provide quite a significant noise hazard in the area if you've got 1,300 dwellings in an area with heat pumps going off at the same time. There's also potentials around grid capacity. And I think that's one of the things that this feasibility study was actually looking at, because it was looking at that as a counterfactual against what would it be to actually cost the heat network to provide the hot water to these dwellings against what it will cost if these were to be upgraded to individual air source heat pumps. And I think you're quite right in saying that it needs to be looked at further, because we need to understand what the detail, and the devil is in the detail of these proposals and how they can feasibly work. One of the problems of a heat network is that they can be fantastically difficult to implement and would involve a lot of disruption in the area where you've got to dig up paths, pavements, etc. So it's something that, in my opinion, does warrant a second look. Yeah, I think the initial outcome of the first feasibility study shows that there is a potential for it, but the heat network density of that area is not great. So maybe something that could be extended to other non-council owned homes in that area could potentially make a better business case of it.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Lismore.
Sorry, I don't wish to extend this, but yes, alarm bells have gone off in my head, because I remember a discussion I had back in 2021 with regards to Northern Gateway, which of course still hasn't happened, but talking about buy-in, about the fact that the new houses that we would hope would be built sooner rather than later, would have to then spend money buying into, the system to gain the advantage. Now, obviously, my argument was there, where people are stretching themselves with a mortgage and trying to buy their first property, they're not going to have a spare 5, 6, 7 grand sitting around to buy into a heating system. Exactly the same argument, I would say, for Greenstead. The majority of the people who live on Greenstead are going to have some spare cash sitting around, especially thousands of pounds, to buy into a system. So whilst it all sounds very good in principle, it really concerns me that in practice it's going to be very difficult to actually get it to take off and to work. So I'm just a bit concerned, but thank you.
Okay, and I've got Councillor Catherine Spindler.
Just a general question to officers and managers of the environment section. And when it comes to pollution, speaking of Brook Street and Madeline Street or even Lexington Road, some of those areas do have a wider path that goes and possibly could have the green walls. Why do we not look at green walls that are supposed to absorb some of that pollution through idling? Or is it just down to funding?
That isn't something we've looked into, I'm afraid.
So the wider the pavement, the further, obviously the further away you are from the road, then the less kind of pollution you're subjected to, and it falls off fairly dramatically on that front. But I would say the reason we haven't looked into kind of that work is because that's a highways function. The footpaths or the footway is owned by Essex Highways as part of their assets, so it'll be up to them. Who knows what will happen in a couple of years' time, but at the moment it's not something we could do.
Did you want to come back, Catherine, or are you okay?
No, that's fine. I just find it a little sad that we don't look into those things, or Essex County doesn't, especially as they absorb so much. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not seeing any further indications for questions, so I think we're going to close off that action point. So we're over 7:30. Do people want to have a break before or are we happy to power on for? Okay, brilliant. So now we're going to move on to the work programme. So Matt will present what what we're thinking for the year, and we can note that report.
Thanks, Chair. This is a standard report that just sets out the proposed items that will come back to the panel during the course of the next municipal year. As at every meeting, if panel members wish to make suggestions or request changes to the work programme, this is the opportunity to do so. But other than that, I've nothing to add, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay, we've had quite a comprehensive discussion over the last week or so about potential items, including sustainable transport hub. So, yeah. Sue, did you have one you wanted to come in with?
Yes, just want to reiterate really what I said at the briefing on Monday. I would very, very much welcome a discussion on, let's call it a bus station. You know, we can call it some modern, thing, but it's a bus station predominantly. But can we make sure it's relevant? I don't want this to be a talking shop. If we invite residents to come and talk or come and listen to a discussion about the bus station, I want us to actually be able to do something rather than just be a talking shop, because that will not get us anywhere and we will only leave residents and ourselves very, very disappointed. So if you can just please keep that message in everyone's mind that yes, please, let's talk about this bus station. But let's make sure that it's relevant and make sure that we can actually do something about it.
So just on that, Mr. Carnes has just informed me that Matt Sterling is very happy to come and speak to the panel. So hopefully we'll be able to plan that in and hear more about the bus station. So thank you. So on that note, if we have no further business, I am going to look to close the meeting tonight. So thank you for attending and safe journeys.
Thank you, Chair.